Hey everyone, welcome to Showing Up, your weekly video series that helps you show up at work, at home, and in life. So today we've got our first guest on our series. Carl Davidson has come in. He's the founder of Research First, and today he's going to be talking to us about imposter syndrome, the signs, symptoms, and most importantly, some solutions. So welcome, Carl. Thank you for being here.
It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here.
Yeah, exactly. Great to have you here. And as we were just talking about off screen, off camera, thank you especially for coming in because, as you said, this is your first day back in the suit, and you're looking at taking another week off. So, what are you doing in that week?
Well, next week we're going paddleboarding up at Kaiteri like everybody else, right?
Right.
Yeah. This week I'm planning for what I'm going to be doing when I get back and how we get 2021 humming, really.
Nice.
Yeah.
Big plans?
Big plans. Big plans. Yeah. Look, 2020 was amazing. 2021 is going to be even better.
Fantastic. Yeah. So, while we've got you here, obviously, imposter syndrome, massive subject. One of our other videos recently we spoke about around, everything is coming into mental health type of stuff. Yeah. We're talking about ADHD and all that type of thing as well. Tell us about signs, like what can we be looking for signs, in the research that you guys are doing? Maybe give us a bit of a lead in as well. What, what is Research First? What are you doing with it?
Well, look, the simple version of that is Research First is an insights company. But the thing that distinguishes us from other research companies is we're a bunch of social scientists, which is why I'm here as a psychologist talking about imposter feelings and imposter phenomenon, right?
Yep.
We're a collection of sociologists, psychologists, marketers, and we solve business problems using research.
Nice.
Yeah. So imposter syndrome. Let's start out by thinking about our language, because psychologists don't call it a syndrome.
Right.
Interestingly enough,
right.
They call it an imposter phenomenon, and that itself is a really important distinction, because that tells us it's not a disease. It's not something you have. It's not like having brown eyes, right? It's something that can occur.
Right.
Right.
So it's not a.
It's not a personality trait.
So you weren't born with it?
You're not born with it.
It's a learnt behaviour.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So what we say in psychology is it's a state, not a trait.
Nice.
That's really important.
Right.
So that's really important from a geeky point of view, because that means that it's not on what we call the DSM. The DSM is the Bible psychologists use to diagnose mental problems. It's not like that. Yep. However, what it is incredibly widespread. So these feelings of being an imposter, this imposter phenomenon, it happens almost to everybody. The research says it's about 80% of people admit to having it. My personal view is the other 20% just aren't saying they've got it. I think everybody experiences the imposter phenomenon at some point. The imposter phenomenon is really, it's several things, but it's a sense that you don't belong and that your success isn't yours, or your success occurred by luck, right? So it's a sense of being a fraud. So you talked about signs of that. The reason that's important is, so there's this sense of my success was somehow a fluke, whatever, I don't deserve to be here and I'm going to get found out. Now what that feeling does, of course, is it gives rise to anxiety.
Yep.
So when you talk about what are the signs of the imposter phenomenon, they're just the signs of anxiety.
Yeah.
They're the signs of, sweaty palms, heart rate, breathing, all of those things. So if you think about what stage fright feels like, that's what imposter syndrome feels like for a whole lot of other people. The problem is that for some people, it's a chronic condition. It's not an acute condition. They experience it all the time. They go through their lives thinking that they're imposters and that they're going to get found out. And when I said before about it's incredibly widespread, lots of people experience it when they're working at the edge of their ability. So when they're actually learning something new, or they're trying something new, or they're really pushing themselves, they experience it. But some people experience it all day long. And what psychologists talk about is, fundamentally it comes down to you not believing in your own success. You just don't believe that the success you've got, you've deserved. And so that's the way you go about addressing it.
So is there... Are there, like you said, if people are at the edge of their ability, because they're trying out new things.
Yeah.
So it's kind of there's a degree there of expectation that yes, when we try out something new, we're going to have this anxiety that goes with it of fear of failure to a degree as well. For the stuff that's consistently happening, what are were there potentially initial triggers that set that off?
Well, there are a number of things. I mean, part of it is, we live in a world that rewards success and achievement.
Yeah.
So actually all of us kind of live with these kind of pressures to succeed. Mm-hmm. So there's that, we're swimming in that world.
Yeah.
And some people respond better to that and some people respond less well to that. The other thing is it all comes down really to your inner monologue, that voice you can hear in your head talking to you all the time. And some people have a much more prominent inner monologue than others. So some people experience this much more acutely and much more often than other people. But actually it's incredibly widespread. If you like, there's a very, very long tail of it. And for some people, the anxiety that comes with it will be absolutely debilitating.
Yeah.
People will quit jobs, will call in sick, won't turn up to do presentations because they're overwhelmed with the anxiety, which is caused by the fact that they don't think that they can cope, and somehow they think they're an imposter. Other people, it's just kind of a low-level noise in the background of their head, this kind of low-level hum that you're not the person everybody thinks you are.
So I imagine the dialogue would be aligned to the belief, right? So it would be, I'm not good enough, and it's internal and it's repetitious. It just keeps going.
And that's a really good point, right? Because where it goes with this is all of us have that internal. To a less or greater extent, we've all got an internal monologue. We have a voice inside our heads, and unfortunately, we often believe that internal voice is either prescient, it knows how things are going to turn out, or it's much more accurate at judging other people. He won't like me, this isn't going to go well. The voice in your head's got no idea how the world's going to turn out. It's got no idea how strangers are going to judge you. But if you can't find a way to quiet that internal monologue or control that internal monologue, if you are a slave to the internal monologue in your head, what you'll discover is that internal monologue is much more often a pessimist than a supporter. In fact, half the time the voice inside your head's an asshole, right? It's telling you all the way you're going to fail and all the way things are going to go wrong. That doesn't mean things are going to go wrong. It just means, what this is about, it's a really important distinction in psychology, that feelings aren't outcomes. Because you feel fearful doesn't mean that something bad's going to happen, right? You've got to actually be able to distinguish between what am I experiencing and what's likely to happen.
So what I find interesting is, with the concept of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So with the work I do, if someone keeps saying how crap they're going to be and how they're going to stutter, how they're going to stumble, they tend to, create a series of events to back that stuff up.
Yeah.
But with imposter syndrome, it's different. It can't be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
No, but it's interesting because the way you address it's almost exactly the same as what you've just talked about. So,
right.
So in all of psychology, what we say is to name it is to tame it. So the first thing you've got to do is when you feel those feelings of doubt, name it.
Yeah.
Right? That's my inner imposter, coming out. Okay?
Yep.
Brilliant. Then you can reframe. Right? So what I teach my kids is, particularly if you're going to give a big speech, that feeling that you feel in your stomach is excitement, not anxiety. Right? So you reframe it. Then the third thing you do is you focus on your success. You don't focus on what can go wrong.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to think, holy shit, I'm going to trip up. It's going to be a disaster. But actually, if you think back to all the times that you've done really well, you performed well in a meeting, you spoke really well, you think about what can go right, not what can go wrong. All of those things are really simple ways of addressing it.
So that's kind of cool because that actually goes back to some of the NLP stuff.
Yeah.
So positive anchoring, right?
Yep.
And remember a time.
Yep.
So anchoring to positive emotions and positive feelings and examples.
And so it's kind of an overlap with the CBT stuff, the cognitive behavior therapy, which is all about controlling that voice in your head. Because if you think about what that voice in your head does, is it will get away from you. It's like it can get away from you. Like, this isn't going well. Nothing's ever going to go well ever again.
Yep.
Negative feelings. Not only is this paper going to go badly, this meeting going to go badly, this presentation is going to go badly, but people are going to discover I'm a fraud, and my whole life's going to unravel. Catastrophizing. The inability to discount. You think about this. I was talking about somebody about this morning. Think about how poor most New Zealanders are at accepting compliments. Right? And I love that thing, when somebody does something heroic, somebody dives into an ocean and saves some drowning kid, and goes, hey, anybody would have done it. In some regards, that's the same thinking that leads to imposter syndrome. It's that inability to say, actually, that was a pretty damn special thing. It wasn't just a fluke. And I did something really good, and that's okay.
Can imposter phenomenon be influenced by the environment?
Yes, very much. Very much. So there's a good argument that social media in particular
Right.
is actually driving an increase in feelings of imposter phenomenon,
Mm-hmm.
precisely because everybody is uploading
Yeah.
the photos of themselves at their best and telling stories of when they're at their best, or editing parts of their video to show themselves at their best, right?
Yeah.
Not so you don't get to see the hard work. And that's, again, this is all about psychological well-being, not just about overcoming imposter phenomenon, but you know, you get to see all the hard work you do. But you only get to see the results of the people around you.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's often really easy to think, you find it really easy. Look at what a great public speaker this guy is. God, he finds it really easy. We're never going to be able to be as good as him.
Yeah.
And we may never be as good as him, but we have to do the work that he's done.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
So we'll jump into solutions.
Yeah.
So we've got science.
Yeah, so we talked about, first of all, recognise that it's going on. You've absolutely got to recognise that it's going on. And the reason we talked about the inner monologue is to realise that it's not happening to you, it's something you're creating,
Yep.
right? And that you can control it. So name it.
Yep.
Name the damn thing. This is just my inner pessimist running amok. You know?
What happens when we name something?
Well, I mean, it helps us actually deal with it rather than, so it helps us identify it, helps us put a ring fence around it, so we can actually attribute solutions to it. I mean, thinking about imposter phenomenon being a product of your kind of inner critic or your inner pessimist is a really easy way to think, well, that's not all I am. There's also, I've got all these other resources. Think about you at your best. Actually, I can do some things and I can do them really well. I want to own my successes. And I can use those resources and those characters to actually defeat or at least tone down that inner pessimist in my head. I mean, one of the really cool techniques that we use a lot with projects and works really well for almost everybody is a thing called a pre-mortem. So this comes out of...
Is that before death?
Yes. So, but it's not about death, right? So you think about the metaphor being, once somebody dies, you can do an autopsy and work out why they died.
Yeah.
In the realm of the business world, a pre-mortem is it's a Kahneman-Tversky trick, which is when you plan your presentation or your meeting or your project, sit around and work out, pretend it went all tits up, right? The thing's gone wrong. Why did it go wrong? Which enables us to all identify the weakest possible link in the logic we've got, and then enables us to address it before we start.
Right.
So if you're really worried about, I'm going to give a presentation, they're going to find me out. Why? Because I haven't got any questions about whatever, financial viability. Well, how about we can get some information to fill in that gap?
Right.
Or why don't we know who that person is so I can direct them and say, the briefing didn't cover that, but here's the person you need to go and talk to. Because it's all about the fear that you're going to get found out. And there's a couple of ways to approach this. One is to go, well, so what? So you get found out. That's not the end of the world.
Yep.
That happens. The second is think about all those times where you thought you'd be found out, and actually it turns out, there's nothing to be found out. I mean, the point that I make with my students at the university, I'm sure you make this too, is whenever they're giving a presentation or a paper, they know more about that topic than most anybody in the room.
Yeah.
And because they know more about the topic, they know where the weakness in their argument is. So they think that somebody's going to spot that argument. But if someone's hearing it for the first time, they've got no chance of knowing that, right?
It's interesting you raise that point, and I think it'd be cool to talk about from a business perspective as well. Like, are businesses attributing to this? How are they?
Yes.
What's happening in place with that? But I'll just jump back, which is probably unknown to a lot of people, is during the period as a TED speaker coach.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to go. I missed the opportunity, but there was TED run in Antarctica.
Yes.
And, there's this whole thing around presenting and anxiety, and the concept that if you're speaking to people it'll be an easier situation. And I've heard this in business. They'll be fine.
Surely it's harder if you're talking to people you know.
So Antarctica has a limited number of people that can be in the room because it's Antarctica, right? And when they delivered Antarctica TEDx Antarctica, I think there was about 40 people tops, and it was everyone from the entire place, And they had, I think most of the people that were speaking on stage had a minimum of double degree type of thing.
Yeah.
There were more stuff-ups, restarts, and all sorts than I've ever seen in my time with TED, where a 13-year-old was talking to an audience of 1,400 people live.
Right.
So environmentally, are businesses potentially setting up environments where they think, it'll be fine because?
But perhaps, but what about if businesses normalise it, right? I mean, what if actually businesses had that conversation, particularly for new staff or for people taking on a project? One of the things we tell our researchers, this is a quote I love, which is, the middle of every successful project looks like a disaster.
Yeah.
And I tell them that, so when they get into the middle of the project and they're juggling any number of different things, to let them know that that's normal. That chaos is normal, and that actually there's a path through that, and you'll get to where you want to go. What happens if we said to people, everybody is making it up? Pick the CEO, pick the person you think has got the most together in the whole. Think about Michelle Obama. She too is making it up and has felt this phenomenon. I mean, look, think about you and everything you've done. I mean, have you ever experienced the feelings of being an imposter? Do you still feel them?
So, it's a lot, a huge amount. Yeah. And, I try and kind of allow people to know this and see it, but debilitating. And I think made worse by my title.
Yeah, but I bet nobody knows that. Have you experienced it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I've experienced it all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Yeah. But knowing that you experience it and you can still perform at a high level is the key.
There are touch and go moments though. Big presentations, depending on who I'm delivering to. But I also suffer from a bit of perfectionism as well.
Right, well it's good you pointed that out, because actually there is a real link between intensity of imposter phenomenon, the imposter phenomenon, and people's perfectionism.
Yeah.
Like if you want to get every detail right and you want this output to be better than it's ever been, then you're really opening yourself up to feelings of, I'm not good enough, this is going to go wrong, they're going to find me out, and everything is on the line with this one particular bet.
So I had to change my business structure to overcome the issue.
Right.
So originally, the business was set up as a bespoke training and development organisation.
Yeah.
So every time, potentially, though I was running a training workshop, it was the first time. And it did my imposter syndrome, my imposter phenomenon, and my perfectionism. It was
drove it crazy.
It drove it crazy. Yeah.
But picking up on that and thinking about business, what could be useful for businesses is at the beginning of a really serious presentation where a young person or a neophyte stepping up, is to actually have a senior person in the room simply say, thanks a lot for doing this presentation. Just want to acknowledge that when we were doing this, often it's really easy to have feelings that that you haven't got what it takes, that somehow you don't belong here, but just want to reiterate that you absolutely do, and we have confidence in you.
Nice.
Actually letting people know that this is normal, right? This anxiety is normal.
Yeah.
And then if they reframe it about the sensation I'm feeling is actually excitement, be away. Yeah. I mean, look, I do endless public speaking, but for the first 3 or 4 minutes of every talk I give, I'm not a wreck, but I'm certainly aroused in the sense of feeling anxious. But I just know that I'm going to get through it, and after 5 minutes I'll be in the groove and everything will be fine.
So that's a pure prime example of anchoring to expectation that you've done this and you know that after that period of time you'll be fine. Yeah.
Somebody once told me courage is just remembering that you've done it before.
Yeah.
That's as simple as it is. Yeah.
Nice.
But then the question becomes, if you haven't done it before and you don't have that anchoring, then you need to think about framing, you need to think about have a really good listen to what's going on inside you, think about, is that getting carried away, is it catastrophizing, is it not, is it discounting, is it refusing to negate, will it not accept the compliments, all of those things.
Yeah, and that raises, that's a fantastic point. If you haven't done it before, what can you do?
Yeah. And that's why people experience it when they're at the edge of their learning, because when you're trying something for the first time, everyone's a beginner to begin with. That's why we call it beginning, right? And so at that point, what can we do to make you think, it's not that you're an imposter, this is just part of the learning journey.
And bearing in mind that as we get older and we're stayed in our ways, we tend to not want to expose the fact that we are still learning.
That's right.
So the conundrum of that.
Yeah.
All good. So thanks, Carl. So we'll just end there and we'll summarise and wrap it up a little bit because we're on a time frame. So, Kaushik, what are your key takeaways from listening to Carl?
Key takeaways. It's imposter phenomenon is nothing to be scared of. I think it's a natural thing for most people. And if you know how to deal with it, it's easy to get over it. And like when some of the techniques that you talked about, like anchoring yourself and knowing getting yourself in the groove and knowing that it's going to actually be okay. And I think just recognizing those techniques when you're feeling those emotions is probably the key to getting over it. So that's probably the biggest takeaway for me, and something that I can probably apply, that I will apply to my own work when I'm sort of feeling the imposter phenomenon creeping in. What about yourself, Michael?
Thanks for asking, man. So the key takeaway from me is, because I like things that rhyme, it's a state, not a trait. So simplifying for me, if it's a learnt behaviour, which means it can be unlearnt. And to me, that's the most important. And it really fits nicely with my mantra for this year, which is good enough. I'm really, to overcome my perfectionism, I'm practicing good enough, which is part of what we're all doing here as well.
Brilliant.
So, any final words to finish off?
No, I mean, I like that. I love that rhyming thing, of course, because that's how your memory works. To name it is to tame it. It's a state, not a trait. That'll do.
Awesome. So thanks again for coming in. We have one final thing to finish off, which we'll run through that right now. So here we go. As quick as you can, wherever you want, however you want. Here's a blank piece of paper and a felt pen, coloured black. Draw a pig. Let's see what you come up with. Nice eyebrows. Loving the body, loving the feet. Oh, well done. Timed out. Done.
Done.
Amazing. Okay, here we go. So, being that you're from a place that values psychology and clarity and all those types of things, this is a psychological assessment based on your drawing. So here we go. If the pig is drawn towards the top of the page, you're a positive and optimistic. It's not. If it's towards the middle of the page, you're a realist.
Wow.
If it's towards the bottom, you're a pessimist and have a tendency to behave negatively. If it's facing the left, you believe in tradition and are friendly and remember dates and birthdays. If it's facing the right, you're innovative and active and do not have a strong sense of family, nor do you remember dates. If it's facing front, which it is looking at you, you are direct. You enjoy playing devil's advocate and neither fear nor avoid decision. Are we on point? If it's facing the rear, it would be, when did you last visit a psychologist? So if it has, now we'll decide amongst us, if it has many details, you are analytical, cautious and distrustful. If it's with a few details, you're emotional. And it says naive. You care little for details and are a risk taker. With less than 4 legs showing, you are living through a period of major change. With 4 legs showing, you are secure, stubborn, and stick to your ideals. The size of the ears indicates how good a listener you are. The bigger the better. And of course, the length of the tail indicates the quality of your sex life. Again, more is better. And I'm so glad to see that you drew a tail on there. Carl Davidson, founder of Research First, thank you very much for coming in, talking to us about imposter phenomenon, the signs, symptoms and solutions. It's been fantastic. Wonderful to have you here. So, as always, chuck any comments that you have in the comment selection. And as always, remember that opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one and that's okay. And of course, if you have any requirements for video, you need video done, feel free to get in touch with Kaushik.
And if you have any requirements for speaker coaching, get in touch with Michael.
Thanks guys, see you next time.
Catch you next week.